Now, job numbers are up by more than a quarter compared to a year earlier. That's a message from search and HR advisory firm Cooper Fitch. In their quarterly index, they reported significant growth in real estate, strategy and the public sector, with a slight dip in AI, telecoms and HR. Joining us now in the studio to explain what this means for you is Trevor Murphy, the CEO of Cooper Fitch. Trevor, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Katie.
So take us through the main message. This is a quarterly index that you have, and some impressive growth in some sectors, but a bit of a contraction in areas like AI, which was a bit of a surprise to me, given how much AI and metaverse is constantly in the headlines.
Sure. I think overall the numbers are very positive. The quarter two this year versus the same period last year was up by a staggering 27%. And this quarter versus quarter one this year, we had a 4% increase on the overall. And that data is raw data. It's not seasonally adjusted. So overall, a very positive result. Sectors that have done very well, as you've outlined, real estate in the UAE has had a significant bump in the last 3 months. Also banking and financial services, all having probably the best year in 3 or 4 years. And then all the consulting practices, private practices in legal, management consulting, strategy, risk and audit, all doing very well.
Because it's interesting, hasn't it? You know, on the bulletin today, we've been talking about higher oil production. That's been a boost for the public sector. But it hasn't only been the government sector that's really seen an increase. It's been across private sectors as well. Yeah. What's been driving a lot of that growth, that 27% increase compared to this time last year?
Sure. Look, I think a lot of it is probably down to some frustrations in boardrooms amongst the CEO community coming out of COVID, having, you know, 2 very below par years in terms of growth and expansion. And now there's just that push to really hit those growth numbers, hit profit numbers up, hit revenue numbers. So I think that the overall, it's probably, that's a big driver for sure in private sector. And there is a level of confidence in the Gulf that maybe doesn't exist in any of the other regions, that we can continue that growth model for sure.
So tell me, what are your expectations for the next 6 months? How are we going to be ending the year? Because there's a lot of talks about potentially a global recession, but you seem to be quite optimistic about the next 6 months.
Sure, yeah. I think we're probably seeing, you know, single to mid double or single digit growth, so maybe 3 to 6% growth quarter on quarter for the next 2 quarters. So very positive on the overall. I think in terms of the overall economy, I think we're seeing really good growth, you know, nearly 6% projected GDP growth for this year ahead. And I don't see us being impacted currently based on the current geo and political global circumstances. I don't see any recession coming through. And if it does, it's probably going to be a mild version of what's happening across Europe and maybe the Americas.
What about rising inflation? That's something we're seeing here in the Emirates as well as around the world. Rising inflation, are we also going to see salaries increase? Are we going to get that pay rise we all want?
So we projected salary increases of about 3 to 4% this year. We probably don't see any changes to that. Inflationary pressures are certainly there. They're here and it's a global phenomenon. But I don't think that salaries really keep in line with inflation. When they're low, salaries don't necessarily equate to being low increases. So I think everyone's going to have to kind of tighten their belts a little bit for the next 6-12 months ahead as we ride through that inflationary pressure. And then I think next year we should see some calming. Early next year we should see some calming in that. But I do not see salaries lining up and keeping up with inflation, unfortunately. Oh,
certainly not a unique phenomenon for the UAEs. It is something we're seeing around the world. Trevor, thank you so much for joining us and for spending your birthday with us as well. Have a very happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you.